seres sensibles, ilimitadas como el espacio, especialmente los seres.
In all the worlds of the 10 directions reside Tathagatas of the 3 times. Before each of you, lions among humans, I prostrate joyfully with body, speech, and mind. And by the power of this aspiration to noble deeds, all conquerors appear vividly in my mind, with as many bodies as there are atoms in all lands. I prostrate to all you conquerors. In each atom are Buddhas, numberless as atoms, all in the midst of the heirs of the Buddhas. Thus I conceive of this Dharma Dhatu as completely filled with you conquerors in this way, with infinite oceans of praise and oceans of diverse melodies. I sing the excellent qualities of all you conquerors and praise all of you gone to bliss, with the best flowers and best garlands, best music, ointments, and excellent parasols, finest lamps and superior incense. I offer to you conquerors with excellent garments and best fragrances and sandalwood powder, heat, pious Mount Meru. All wondrous offerings perfectly arranged, I offer to you conquerors these vast and unequal offerings to each and every one of you conquerors with the power of conviction and noble deeds. I prostrate and offer to all you conquerors all the harmful deeds that I have done with my body, speech, and mind. Under the power of desire, hatred, and ignorance, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in all the meritorious deeds of the conquerors in the 10 directions and the heirs of the Buddhas. Solitary realizers, hearers still in training and beyond, and all wandering beings. You who are lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who have unobstructedly attained Buddhahood through the stages of Bodhi. Oh, you who are my protectors, please turn the unexhaled wheel of Dharma. With palms together, I earnestly beseech you who may intend to manifest final nirvana. Please remain for as many eons as there are atoms in the world for the happiness and well-being of all wandering beings. Whatever slight virtue that may have been gathered through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and beseeching, I now dedicate to complete Bodhi. So she buki jushi medo cha bira lenshi ninde kempa di sanje shintu meite bowa ye drogo namda shinla kyawar sho kuzun yongso lame tso namla jinang sangsun deshi niki chu dalu longju nangsi yongshe la Lame chuging adu zadu zo jase wadang chujing shapadang jise yirang kushing sowa ye gewa chungse dagi jishapa tamche sobe chanchun chirngo guru dewa dhagini rena mandala prade jaso semjen namki sampadang Loyi jidra jida var jijung tomon teba ye chogi golo koridu so chanje dele naroda mamita popa tu jintengu kadin sunden sawe lame shamsa julama yidam chogyong la so wadem so dam ye jenje lo kembengi tome samengen tope tom sonyong la kya zome kya wado je cha Paji Dengum Pushabla do Tatu Sangi Kaleme Jinji Loshi do Jiningi Mupesen, again simple day do Dobra Jinjil, Hong Jinju Jinu Chansan Pemakesa Tombola. Yosen Jogging or Dumye Pema Junisha Shuda Guru Kandu Mampungo, Gagi Jesu Da, do Gijinjil of Jishes or Guru Pemase de Hong. O me Ingi. Oh, man, Jugi in Gipodan, the Susan cooking over here. Ransen Jogung on Sundon Sebezawela Mesha Lazo. So, good evening, good morning to
Buenos
everyone,
días, buenas tardes a todos.
So, last class, we stopped at verse 82. Now, verse 83, verse 84. This is starting to transition into the third of the three sets of disciplines for bodhisattvas, right? The first set of discipline is the avoidance of stopping creating negativity. The second set of discipline is the discipline of benefiting, engaging in that which is virtuous. And then the third set is the discipline of benefiting other beings. So we are finishing up the section that Khenpo Kumpel has identified as the discipline of engaging in virtue and transitioning into the next discipline.
Entonces, en la última clase quedamos en el verso 82, que para las personas que estamos con el otro texto, el Camino de la Vida del Bodhisattva, es el que vendría a ser el 81, y ahora del 82 al 83 transiciona en el tercero de los sets de disciplina para el Bodhisattva. El primero de ese juego, digamos, de ese set es evitar crear negatividad. La segunda, digamos, el segundo de ese set de disciplina es evitar, ¿no es cierto?, es generar, tener la disciplina de realizar acciones virtuosas, y la disciplina de beneficiar a otros seres, y terminamos la sección, ¿no es cierto?, que Khenpo Kumpel identificó como la disciplina de comprometerse en la virtud.
We should take note that in the section discussing the discipline of engaging in virtue, there's two parts to that, right? The first part is regarding how the need to overcome or minimize at least attachment and entanglements with this body, this life. So in a sense, then you could say that Shantideva sees that as an obstacle to the discipline of engaging in virtue. So first, you have to work on or see the faults of being attached to this body, to this self. Then on that basis, we can begin to cultivate the virtuous qualities. So that section has two parts to it.
Entonces, se debe tomar en cuenta que la sección de comprometerse en la virtud tiene dos partes. La primera es la necesidad de sobreponerse al apego con este cuerpo y con esta vida. Y en ese sentido, Shantideva ve esto como un obstáculo para comprometerse con la virtud. Hay que ver las faltas, ¿no?, de apegarse al cuerpo y a uno mismo. Y ahí uno puede comenzar a cultivar las acciones virtuosas.
So let's read 83 and 84 now. The perfections giving and the rest progress in sequence, growing in importance. The grade should never be abandoned for the less, and others' good should be regarded as supreme. Therefore, understand this well, and always labor for the benefit of beings. The compassionate one farsightedly permits to this end even what has been proscribed.
Dándonos cuenta de ello, debemos siempre esforzarnos por el beneficio de los demás. Incluso lo que está prohibido se permite al ser compasivo que encuentra con ello un beneficio.
So generally, then, what these two verses are saying, first, that it's saying, if you look at the way that the six perfections, the six paramitas, the way they are arranged in a sequence. So the first of the paramitas is the paramita of giving or generosity. Then the paramita of ethical conduct, discipline. Then patience or forbearance. Then diligence. Then meditative concentration. Then wisdom. So it's arranged in this way. So here Shantideva is saying that there is a reason why it is arranged in this way because there is a progress that is going on as you go from one paramita to the next paramita. It becomes more and more profound. The practice becomes more and more profound, and the results of the practice of each of these paramita becomes more and more fruitful. So he says, we need to understand this. And so there is a progress in the sequencing, growing in importance, as he puts it here in verse 83.
Generalmente lo que dicen estos versos, si primero miras la forma en que las 6 paramitas están ordenadas en una secuencia, la primera de las paramitas es la generosidad o el dar, luego la paramita de la conducta ética o disciplina, posteriormente viene la paramita de la paciencia, luego la diligencia, la concentración meditativa y luego la sabiduría. Todo esto es ordenado de esta forma. Acá Shantideva dice que hay una razón para este orden, porque el progreso desde la primera paramita hasta la sexta se vuelve más profundo, la práctica se vuelve más profunda y los resultados de la práctica de cada paramita son cada vez más fructíferos. Debemos entender esto, que existe un progreso, ¿no es cierto?, que crece en importancia.
Then also in this verse he says, and given that, and if we understand that, then the great should never be abandoned for the less. And the implication here is, the higher paramitas should not be abandoned for the less. Meaning, like, if you have to choose, if you have to choose between practicing this higher paramita as opposed to practicing this lower paramita, it says you should never practice sacrifice, like the higher for the lesser. So that's what he's saying.
Luego en este verso en particular dice que dado esto, la más importante no debe ser abandonada por la menor. La implicancia de esto es que las paramitas más altas, las más profundas, no deben ser abandonadas por aquellas que son menores. Si tuvieras que elegir entre practicar entre una paramita alta y una baja, nunca deberías dejar de practicar las altas por las bajas, o las inferiores o menores.
Then that last line makes the final point in this verse, in this verse here. It is, and others' good should be regarded as supreme. So interestingly, right? You have 6 paramitas from generosity, giving, all the way to wisdom. So he says, the greater should not be sacrifice for the sake of the lesser. But then this final line says, however, others' good should be regarded as supreme. So even more than wisdom, so to say, is others' good. Now, of course, here others' good isn't like others' ordinary good. You do not sacrifice the practice of wisdom paramita because you think, I should do something good for this person. I should buy them an ice cream and then give up wisdom. So it's not talking about, right, others' ordinary good. It's talking about others' highest good, which is them leaving, breaking free from confusion, breaking free from samsara, and achieving the state of Buddha. So this last line, should not be kind of misread as, any and all kinds of so-called good of others should be held as supreme to the practice of the 6 paramitas. It's saying, no. It's saying, it's a reminder, Shantideva is reminding us. And don't forget, why do we even practice the 6 paramitas? Why do we even get into application bodhicitta, right? Six practice of the six paramitas is basically carrying out application bodhicitta. He says, why are we even practicing the six paramitas? Because it is to most effectively benefit others in the most meaningful, in the most reliable way. And that should be regarded as supreme. So that's this final point in verse 83.
Luego, en el final del verso 84, dice, perdón, 82, dice, a menos que vaya de acuerdo con el puente del camino de la vía del Bodhisattva. No debemos abandonar una perfección que sea mayor por otra, que sea menor, a menos que vaya de acuerdo con el puente del camino del Bodhisattva. ¿Qué quiere decir con eso? Luego, en la última línea, porque él habla de las 6 paramitas, dice que no debemos sacrificar la menor, ¿no es cierto? Dejar de practicar las bodhicitta, digamos, las paramitas mayores por las menores, ¿no es cierto? Pero al final dice que debemos siempre recordar que el objetivo final, ¿no es cierto?, es un recordatorio que no debemos olvidar, que la razón por la que practicamos es porque debemos entender que la forma más efectiva de ayudar a los otros seres y la más confiable es a través, ¿no es cierto?, del desarrollo de la bodhicitta. Entonces, no se debe malentender con el sentido de hacer cosas buenas por otro, por ejemplo, ir a comprar un helado, por ejemplo. No se debe malentender desde esa forma cuando hablamos, por ejemplo, en beneficiar a otros, sino que se habla desde el beneficio, del beneficio del desarrollo de la bodhicitta para finalmente la liberación de los seres.
So here, it's in the context of like practicing that which is virtuous, that which is skillful, that this verse is given. These points are made here. So to me, it's saying, you know, we even as we are practicing the perfections, the paramitas, one by one, because the tradition does say at the beginning you should mostly practice at that level that you are most capable of practicing. So the teachings also say that. So like at the beginning you should mostly practice generosity, giving, practice giving. When that is stable and has become more and more easy, then we practice disciplined conduct. But of course, nowhere does it say only practice generosity giving at this point. Then only practice that disciplined conduct. Now you are in paramita, 201, right? So now chemistry 101, this is chemistry 101, then chemistry 201, right? Paramita 101 class, then paramita 201 class. But it's not saying that, right? But there is an emphasis that even as you practice giving, or that, there are different points in our growth, our progress, where we should be focusing on the appropriate paramita. So this verse turning up here to me is saying, even as there's this sequence going on, we should always also have a kind of a broader view and not get too narrow into like, oh, I'm doing this or I'm practicing this. And disciplined conduct, no matter what, or giving, is where I am, and the rest I can just not think about or ignore. but to have a broader view to see that, yes, right now, most relevant to me is mostly practicing generosity, but between generosity and ethical disciplined conduct in a way is superior to just generosity. Why? The essence of disciplined conduct is to not cause harm. So your giving should take into consideration not causing harm. Don't give things that could cause harm. For example, so it's not so much, to me, I don't read this so much as a scenario where should I be ethical or should I be generous? Like they're in conflict. But rather, right? No matter what paramita we are in that moment that we seem to be practicing, right? We need to have a broader view, a more holistic view. And the most holistic view, the most complete view is the view or the motivation of all this I do for the ultimate benefit of beings, for the supreme benefit of beings, that it should be embraced by that motivation and not, and our practice should not get too narrowly kind of bracket away that we forget the bigger reason. That's part of what 83 is reminding us.
Entonces, exploramos un poco más en lo que dice el verso 82. En el contexto de practicar lo que es virtuoso y lo que es hábil, lo que se da en este verso es que se hacen estos puntos, dice, se destacan estos puntos. Para mí lo que está diciendo es que incluso si estamos practicando las perfecciones de las paramitas una por una, porque la tradición dice que al principio debes practicar al nivel que eres más capaz de practicar, que esté más alineado con tus habilidades. Y las enseñanzas también dicen eso. Al principio deberías practicar la generosidad y cuando eso está estable, luego practicamos la disciplina o la conducta ética. No dice que solamente practiques la generosidad o que solamente practiques la disciplina o la ética. Esto no es como un curso en la universidad donde tú tomas uno, luego pasas al otro. No dice eso, pero existe un énfasis en que si bien tú practicas la generosidad, ¿no es cierto?, y hay diferentes puntos en nuestro desarrollo, debemos enfocarnos en la paramita apropiado. Este verso lo que dice para mí es que si bien existe esta secuencia, también tenemos que tener esta mirada más extensa y no caer en una visión limitada de que yo solamente hago una cosa e ignoro el resto. Uno lo entiende más bien como qué es lo que es más relevante en el momento a practicar. Por ejemplo, una conducta ética que es superior a la generosidad. La esencia de la conducta, de la disciplina o la conducta ética es no causar daño. Así es que si tú practicas la generosidad, deberías siempre tomar en consideración el hecho de no causar daño, que es una paramita superior. Entonces, yo no leo esto como un escenario donde uno se pregunta, ¿qué debo hacer? ¿Ser generoso o debería ser ético? Porque no existe conflicto entre las paramitas. Siempre que estemos practicando, entonces una de las paramitas debemos tener esta visión más amplia y holística, que es la visión de que todo lo que se hace, todo lo que hago es por el beneficio supremo de los seres, y todo lo que se hace debería estar como siempre rodeado por esta motivación, por lo que la práctica no debería ser tan rígida. Esto es lo que recuerda el verso 82.
84, it says, with this understanding, always labor for the benefit of beings, and in that laboring for the benefit of beings, it says the Buddha, the compassionate one, even permits things that in other contexts are proscribed. Meaning, in other contexts, he says, no, don't do this. But if it can be, but under the circumstance of the bigger kind of motivation of benefiting beings, in some cases, he says, okay, that is allowed. What previously was said to be not allowed, so to say.
Entonces en el verso 83 dice, incluso lo que está prohibido se permite al ser compasivo que encuentra en ello un beneficio. Lo que quiere decir esto es que el Buda incluso permite cosas que en otro contexto están prohibidas. En otro contexto, Buda dice, esto no se hace, pero bajo las circunstancias de la motivación más amplia que es beneficiar a los seres, dice, en ese caso sí está permitido.
Now here, I think we have to kind of look further into these two verses and see what is being said and what is not being said. Or rather, how should we refine our understanding of 83 and 84? Because there are some deeper implications or deeper questions that we have to ask. The general principle of 83 and 84 as expressed by Shantideva here is of course very good kind of advice. That even though the paramitas are things that we should practice as bodhisattvas, know that there is a level of profundity that is increasing with each level. And that the lower prescription, so to say, that Buddha prescribes, mostly now here practice giving, that this lower prescription of practicing giving, there's something higher, which is the practice of not causing harm. And if you think about it, causing harm to others basically comes out of self-cherishing. So practicing giving up self-cherishing is a deeper way to practice generosity. It's not like they're in conflict at all. So I think this is one crucial point for us, a deeper point in 83 and 84 that we should also know. Shantideva doesn't say it explicitly, but this deeper point is, I would say, don't so quickly switch in or go into this mode of like somehow there are contradictions in the 6 paramitas, whereby you can say, oh, I'm practicing a higher one, so I can ignore a lower one. It's not advocating that. But unfortunately, I think if we don't read 83 and 84 more carefully, we might think, oh, the idea that the higher supersedes the lower in a simplistic way. That attitude, especially these days, where we think we are really smart, is dangerous. We think, oh, well, for the greater good, I'm going to do this. I think that's a very superficial read of what Shantideva is saying.
Aquí pienso que debemos tener una mirada en particular 2 versos, versos 82 y 83, Tenemos que mirar más allá y ver qué es lo que dice y qué es lo que no dice. ¿Cómo debería yo refinar mi entendimiento de los versos 82 y 83? Porque existen algunas implicancias más profundas o preguntas más profundas que debería hacerme. El principio general de los versos 82 y 83 es, por supuesto, un buen consejo. Y si bien hay cosas que debemos practicar como bodhisattva, existe un orden de profundidad. Esta práctica, las parámetros más bajas, por ejemplo, de la generosidad, ¿no es cierto? Existe una práctica más elevada, que es, por ejemplo, aquella de la conducta ética. Pero por practicar lo más profundo, lo más elevado, no debes cambiar, digamos, y no debes pensar que existen contradicciones entre las 6 paramitas y entender de manera superficial que si tú estás practicando la paramita más elevada, deberías de alguna manera ignorar las inferiores por, entre comillas, digamos, el beneficio del otro, ¿no es cierto? Entonces, es muy peligroso pensar de esta forma y entender estos versos de manera superficial.
So Kyopa Jigten Sumgun especially emphasizes carefulness in understanding what is being said. Not just here in Shantideva, of course, in many sutras, you can find seemingly examples that suggest for a greater reason, you can seemingly go against or break a vow. So here, I think especially in this day and time, we need to be careful because we have gotten so smart. We think, oh, those rules, they are the lower. We have this higher understanding. We don't need those lower kind of Buddhism for dummies, just for beginners. So it's not just, I'm not like, just being partisan to say, oh, because Kyopa Rinpoche says, therefore it must be true. But if you really think more about this, right, it is not, how can it be the case, right, that the Buddha gets in the business of literally allowing or not allowing this or that? First of all, in our system, Buddha is not God. In fact, in our system, we don't accept that there is even such a possibility. Whether Buddha or God or whoever, no one can really say, for you, in this case, I will forgive you, so I will not punish you. For you, in this case, I will punish you for doing this or that. That is not how the understanding of Buddha Dharma is. The Buddha Dharma's understanding is everything operates according to cause and effect. And then, of course, the operation of cause and effect in terms of actions by sentient beings, intention, motivation determines the result of those actions, those karmic actions, okay? Now, karmic action, just to clarify, now maybe getting a more complicated, when we say karmic actions, we don't mean like, I think I've used this example before. We don't mean like, for example, let's see. Yeah, this, you know, like this. So these paper towels, you know, this is not a karmic action, okay? This is gravity at work. Yes, in English, we still call cause and effect, but this is not karma, cause and effect. Yeah, this is gravity at work, right? Now, if, right, this was something heavier, say, oh, I don't know. Yeah, if this was this, okay, and I see a bug crawling down here, and I go, haha. Okay, it's going to be loud. Yeah. Okay, gravity is at work, but now karma has been created because I saw a bug and I go, haha, and I crush the bug. Now that is karma, with gravity as just a neutral condition. Yeah. Now, when it comes to especially karmic actions, or likewise, you know, here, for whatever reason, I'm going to drop this, right? Then I see there's a bug. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not going to drop. It will kill the bug. Then I drop it here. Now also karma has been created, positive karma, which is I didn't want to harm this bug. Then I drop it here. Now, insofar as the workings of karma goes, again, in our system, in a system that is not based on a God that came up with all these rules and therefore is at liberty to discount the rules as he or she or it wishes, Buddha also doesn't get in the business and cannot get in the business of saying, oh, you are forgiven here, you are not forgiven there.
Entonces, Kyopa Yikten Sungon especialmente enfatiza eso, cuidadosamente entender qué es lo que se dice, no solo para Shantideva, sino que en otros sutras también puedes encontrar instrucciones de que por beneficios superiores puedes romper un voto, por ejemplo. Pero acá debemos ser muy cuidadosos. Y no pensar en que soy muy inteligente, por lo tanto las reglas inferiores yo no las necesito o no aplican a mí, porque yo estoy en un nivel superior. Son como una suerte de budismo para tontos, estas reglas inferiores. Si realmente piensas bien en esto, no es que sea el caso de Buda, que deje literalmente hacer esto o lo otro. Primero que nada, en nuestro sistema, el Buda no es Dios. Por lo tanto, no existe esa posibilidad. ¿No es cierto? Nadie realmente puede, por ejemplo, decir yo esta acción te la perdono y esta acción no la perdono, es positiva o negativa. Esto no es como se entiende el Buda Dharma. El Buda Dharma dice que todo opera de acuerdo a causa y efecto. Y luego la acción, ¿no es cierto?, la que te causa efecto en términos de los seres sintientes y la motivación, tiene un efecto en esta acción kármica. Ahora, la acción kármica, nosotros no queremos decir que, por ejemplo, y él estaba dando el ejemplo de que tomaba un papel y lo dejaba caer. Eso, por ejemplo, no es una acción kármica, es sencillamente la causa y el efecto de la gravedad, aunque en nuestro lenguaje convencional eso se puede determinar causa y efecto, pero cuando hablamos de las acciones kármicas, realmente eso es solo una suerte de acción neutra. Ahora, si esto fuera algo más pesado, ¿ya?, y yo dejo caer este libro que le estaba dejando caer sobre un insecto, por ejemplo, ¿ya?, y lo dejo caer para aplastar ese insecto a conciencia, digamos, luego ahí se ha creado una acción kármica, por ejemplo, ¿ya? Y ahí la gravedad también funciona, pero karma se ha creado porque yo mato al insecto. La gravedad también es una suerte de condición neutral que está, ¿no es cierto?, que rodeando esas circunstancias. Entonces, si yo de la misma manera tomo este libro pesado y cuando lo voy a dejar caer, digo, oh, hay un insecto, entonces yo voy a tomar esto y lo voy a mover a otro lado para evitar matar al insecto, también estamos hablando de una acción kármica. Entonces, en nuestro sistema, Buda no puede decir que si eres o no perdonado por las acciones, tiene que ver en realidad con las acciones kármicas, con la causa y efecto asociado a las acciones kármicas.
So here, I don't know how it's translated in Chinese and Spanish here. So in English, it says, 84, permits and proscribe. So allow or don't allow, if we just use those simple words, allow or don't allow. Here, when we say this, when we say the Buddha allows where other places where he doesn't allow, important, we have to first understand this is not, don't treat the Buddha like God. God is free to, change the rules as he wishes because he came up with the rules, right? According to the God system. But in our system, we don't have things like this. In fact, Buddha says, no, this cannot be the case. So here, how should we understand what is meant here by Buddha allow or disallow? Is basically we're talking about Buddha. The Buddha shows us how, first of all karmic actions have karmic consequences, right? So that's the first point we need to understand. All karmic causes have karmic consequences. I'm using the word karmic the way I'm distinguishing between this kind of action with no moral ethical dimension to it, simply gravity at work. Yeah. Two, karmic action is actions with intentions and motivations. So when it comes to those moral actions, it's not, so first of all, Buddha doesn't allow or disallow in the way other religions think, God allows or disallow. So that's first thing we need to understand. So second thing, so what do we mean when we say Buddha allow or disallow? It's not like the Buddha is changing his understanding or application of the way things are. It's just in the cases where he seems to say, oh, for this reason you can do this, whereas over there you cannot do this. He's pointing to a more profound way of understanding a situation. So for example, simple example of generally in the monk's vows, for example, or monk's rule of conduct, which we talked about last class, a monk is not to touch a woman. Likewise, a nun is not to touch a man. So that the Buddha, quote unquote, disallow, right? However, if a monk was, it's not, in other words, last class I said, if the monk touches a woman without objectifying the woman, right? Or sexualizing a woman, then there is no karma, no negative karma being created. Whether the touching is to move the woman out of danger, which clearly we can see there is no negative karma there. In fact, it is a positive karma. Or, and now this next part might be a little controversial, especially in Asia. Maybe in the West, you think, oh, what's the controversy? You know, especially in Latin America, like among maybe giving someone a hug, you know. Oh, in Asia, actually, that's like no, you know. And that's about, you know, what people expect. Shantideva did teach that. Later we'll see. He said, don't scandalize people. Don't do things that will make people lose respect for you. So in Asia, you know, maybe monks, even you're not sexualizing and having, you know, intentions like that, you know, also don't hug, you know. But in other circumstances, right? If someone is crying, you know, male or female, you know, if here, you know, to me, Shantideva is saying, in those cases, you give them a hug, they feel much better. Of course, there's no negative. So to me, 83 and 84 is talking about things like this. It's not so much that the rules that the Buddha gave have contradiction. It's just we have to understand the deeper underlying principle. Actually, in Asia, you know, forget about like a monk hugging a woman. A monk should not even hug another monk. It's not acceptable. And you know, there are cultural considerations, which is also important. The Vinaya rules were also in part given to reflect not causing scandal. So those are also important things to pay attention to.
Aquí en el verso 83, cuando decimos que Buda permite cosas que en otros lugares donde no se permite, es importante no tratar al Buda como un Dios. Pero en nuestro sistema no tenemos cosas así, ¿no es cierto? Se dice que no es el caso. ¿Cómo debemos entender lo que dice acá en términos de lo que se puede o lo que no se puede hacer? Lo que decimos es que Buda nos muestra que todas las acciones kármicas tienen consecuencias kármicas. Ese es el primer punto que debemos entender. Uso la palabra kármica del modo de distinguir las acciones que tienen intenciones y motivaciones. Cuando nos referimos a las acciones kármicas, primero que nada, Buda permite o no permite. O sea, no es que el Buda permita o no permita en la forma en que otras religiones lo hacen. Entonces, ¿qué quiere decir esto cuando Buda dice que esto se puede o no se puede hacer? No significa que Buda cambia su entendimiento de cómo son las cosas. En estos casos, lo que sucede es que apunta a una forma más profunda de entender una situación. Por ejemplo, generalmente en los votos de los monjes, en los votos de conducta de los monjes, un monje no debe tocar a una mujer y una mujer no debe tocar a un hombre. Sin embargo, si un hombre toca a una mujer, o sea, un monje toca a una mujer por alguna circunstancia en particular y lo hace sin sexualizarla, sin objetivizarla, ¿no? Sin tratarla como un objeto, entonces no existe ese karma negativo creado. Si es para el bien de la mujer, por ejemplo, la toca para moverla fuera del peligro, en realidad ahí hay karma positivo. Por ejemplo, esto quizás podría ser más controversial en Asia que en los países de Sudamérica, sobre todo Latinoamérica, pero por ejemplo un monje dando un abrazo, en Asia esto no sería muy bien visto. Sin embargo, en Sudamérica, por ejemplo, un monje que abraza a una persona que está llorando, hombre o mujer, que está llorando porque se siente mal y la abraza para darle confort, para darle tranquilidad, entonces en ese caso no estamos hablando del mismo tipo de acción. Entonces aquí Shantideva, para mí en los versos 82-83, habla de eso. ¿Ya? No es que las reglas de Buda se contradigan, sino que realmente tenemos que entender el significado profundo.
So in summary, 83, 84, yeah, I would say understand the general principle that Shantideva is teaching us here. But also, don't be so quick, right, to think, oh, the higher teachings trumps the lower teachings. That there are higher teachings. If I practice the higher, I don't need. I can even break the lower. Don't so quickly. If you are thinking like this, you are not understanding. It's a good sign that you're not understanding how all this works. So like I said, if you really understand, you'll see that what is taught in the disciplined conduct is a deeper way, a more refined way of practicing giving. Then what is taught in the patience, forbearance paramita is an even more profound way of really practicing this disciplined conduct. And then what is taught in joyful effort, is a more profound way to practice the patience paramita. What is taught in meditative concentration is a more profound way to actualize, embody all the paramitas that come before it. And wisdom, if it is truly wisdom, it carries all the other 5 paramitas along with it. That we should understand that this is really how it works. Not that there are, oh, this is contradicting this, therefore I should do this and not that. It's not that way. Yeah?
Entonces, en resumen, los versos 82-83 nos enseñan que el principio general de que Shantideva nos enseña acá. Pero no debemos hacer un juicio muy rápido y de entender que las enseñanzas superiores o más elevadas pueden de alguna manera permitirnos romper o no respetar aquellas enseñanzas y prácticas inferiores. Si piensas así, quiere decir que no estás entendiendo cómo esto funciona. Si realmente entiendes lo que se enseña en la conducta disciplinada, por ejemplo, lo que quiere decir realmente es que es una forma más profunda de practicar la generosidad. De la misma forma, la paciencia es una forma más profunda de practicar la disciplina o la ética. La perseverancia, a su vez, vendría a ser una forma más profunda de practicar la paciencia. La estabilidad mental vendría así siendo una forma más profunda de practicar la perseverancia y así. Básicamente cada paramita, en la medida que vamos evolucionando la práctica de las 6 paramitas, significa que estamos desarrollando formas más profundas de practicar las anteriores, no que nosotros podemos dejar o no respetar las más inferiores o más bajas por el hecho de estar practicando las superiores.
And finally, practicing all of this for the sake of others achieving Buddha. This is kind of like the grandest context that we need to understand.
Y finalmente practicar todo esto para el beneficio de todos, para que todos logren la bodhidad. Ese es el gran contexto que debemos entender.
So we'll take a break and we'll come back beginning the next section with questions.
Vamos a volver a la siguiente sección
so we'll
con
take
preguntas.
A brief break right now.
Vamos a tomar un breve El
So let's see if there are any questions or comments.
Pregunta Dr. Lee si es que hay alguna pregunta o algún comentario.
Yes, Peter, go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Lee. I was thinking that the sixth paramita, superior wisdom, is a huge kind of leap from the first five, and yet it's something that's probably essential to be able to. Sorry, I'll open my. Essential to be able to benefit others, especially when we're doing things that are prescribed, you know. So I was wondering if you had any suggestions about daily practice that might help us to cultivate that sixth paramita.
First of all, I don't think the sixth paramita is that big a leap from the other paramita. So anyway, let's give the interpreters a chance to translate your question.
Sí, la pregunta era si para la práctica, si era necesario, si era posible que diera algunos consejos para la práctica de las 6 paramitas.
Oh, okay. The gist of it is that the sixth paramita, paramita of wisdom, seems such a jump from the other 5 paramitas. And given that, you know, to benefit beings, We need, of course, all the paramitas, and especially the 6 paramita. So then in our day-to-day life and practice, how can we kind of increase understanding or practice of the 6 paramita in particular? Is that correct, Peter? You want to add some more?
Yeah, that's essentially correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If I could just add, my understanding of the
Una cosa que no aclaré de la pregunta es que Peter pregunta, él siente que como que la paramita de la sabiduría es como un gran salto desde las otras 5 paramitas. Entonces, el doctor le dice, bueno, yo no creo que sea tan así, pero...
I see. Well, that understanding might need to be
pero eso es lo que
adjusted.
Pregunta.
Yeah. So... Yeah, so my first comment is that I don't think it's such a leap between the 6 paramita and the other 5 already. And of course, when we talk about the paramitas, it could be like the paramitas presented in so many different places in the Buddhist texts, all the different texts. Then principally to anchor it on Shantideva itself, Shantideva's text itself, I would say that already, he's already teaching a lot of wisdom from the very beginning. It's only that it will be explicitly discussed in chapter 9. So the wisdom is always already there. So that by the time we come to chapter 9, which is the chapter on wisdom, then he directly addresses that topic.
Entonces, mi primer comentario sobre esta pregunta es que yo no creo que exista un salto entre la 6ª paramita y las otras 5. Por supuesto, cuando hablamos de las paramitas, estas son presentadas en tantos textos budistas, en tantos lugares, pero en términos de los textos de Shantideva, él ya está enseñando mucho acerca de la sabiduría, solo que explícitamente vamos a revisarla cuando estudiemos el capítulo 9. Ahí Shantideva aborda la sabiduría, el tópico de la sabiduría directamente.
And so the other 5 paramitas, as we progress, as we go along with this book, that's exactly what we should be practicing.
Y el resto de las 5 paramitas, como en la medida que vayamos progresando, es lo que deberíamos estar practicando.
So sometimes the first 5 paramitas are called the means, the methods.
A veces las 5 primeras paramitas se le llaman los medios o los métodos.
And the 6th paramita is the wisdom. So another way of putting it, you could say the 6th paramita is the essence, and the other 5 paramitas is the function.
Entonces, de alguna manera podríamos decir que la 6ª paramita, la de la sabiduría, es la esencia, y las 5 otras paramitas son la función.
So to fully actualize the essence and the function of this, of something, is what's going on. So rather than seeing it as a causal relationship, like the other 5 paramitas lead to resulting in the 6th paramita. I think one way of looking at this is to understand that the 6th paramita of wisdom is the essence, and the 5 paramitas of means is the function. When essence and function flow together, then you can say, right, the object is now actualized.
Entonces, para
Chinese translation, 体用.
Para lograr completamente la
Essence
esencia
function.
y la función,
This is
en términos
Huayan
de que la
vocabulary.
sabiduría es la esencia y las 5 otras parámetros son la función, para lograr efectivamente la esencia y la función de algo, es lo que debemos entender es que en lugar de verlo como una relación causal, quiere decir que las 5 parámetros nos lleven a la 6ª, una forma de verlo es que en realidad la 6ª es la esencia y las 5 otras son los medios, son las funciones. Entonces, cuando la esencia y las funciones fluyen juntas, puedes decir que has logrado el objetivo.
Now, as for the comment that the wisdom chapter is about no separation between self and other, all I will say now is let's hold off on that and see if that's how Shantideva talks about it.
También se está refiriendo sobre el capítulo 9. Dice que vamos a esperar hasta que lleguemos a ese punto.
Yes, Judy.
When you're talking about essence and function both coming together and the object appears or is perceived.
No, not perceived. It's poetically, it's actualized.
Actualized, okay. But it's, if we have poor function and lack in essence, the actualization of the object will be something different from what it is if we have. I mean, this is.
What are you talking about? Yeah. Are you taking this expression into other areas or specifically in the context of wisdom and the other 5 paramitas?
Well, I'm trying to think of it from a practical standpoint. If we have essence and function of a higher being.
No,
versus
no, let's not take it in that
function.
direction. I didn't mean it in that direction.
But with essence and function evolved, then what actualizes is different from if it's not evolved.
No.
Am I guess all off base?
I'm saying this, yeah, off base completely. You are taking simply a vocabulary that I'm using to help you understand the relationship between the first 5 paramitas and the 6th paramita, and then you're going in a different direction with that. Here, all I'm saying is we tend to have a very we tend to have a very kind of linear understanding of the paramitas, and it tends to go in the direction of like the first 5, if you practice them really well, it leads to the 6th. So I am suggesting that there's another way of understanding this, that although yes, there is a linearity, in fact 83 tells you there's a certain linear, there's a certain progression, practice the first one, then the second, then the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then all of that leads to the sixth, and the sixth is, yay, wonderful, and the greatest. I said, okay, so that's the general kind of way it's talked about. But another way, which is not like an alternative way, but to enhance your understanding of this, you should see it as, don't see the 5 as leading to the 6, as if once you get to the 6, you don't need the 5. But the 6 and the first 5 are related to each other in the sense of the 6 is the essence, and the 5 is the way this essence functions in the world. The way this wisdom functions is it manifests itself in the perfection of giving, disciplined conduct, patience, vigilance, meditative concentration.
Entonces Judy estaba preguntando de alguna manera si es que si había si está en el entendimiento de que las 5 primeras paramitas eran la función y la sexta era la sabiduría, si es que había alguna forma como de separar esas funciones sin sabiduría. Entonces el doctor Livy dijo que en realidad estaba entendiendo, estaba como desglosando la pregunta y se estaba yendo para un lado que no tenía, y en realidad lo que él quiere decir es que cuando habla de esencia-funciones, que básicamente cuando logramos el objeto, a ver, voy a replantear, disculpen. Cuando lo plantea como sabiduría y como las 5 primeras paramitas función, lo que él sugiere es que existen otras formas de entender las 6 paramitas, y que si bien el verso 82 o el 83 en el texto que tiene Dr. Lee, dice que existe una suerte de práctica lineal, ¿no es cierto?, que debemos practicarlas de manera progresiva. También existe otra forma de mejorar ese entendimiento para no verlo como separadas, y es que las 5 paramitas y la sexta están relacionadas con el hecho de que y lo simplifica de la manera en que la sexta es como la esencia, y las 5 otras paramitas son la forma en que esta sabiduría se manifiesta en la perfección de las otras paramitas, como la generosidad, como la conducta ética, como la concentración meditativa, etc. Si alguien desea también hacer alguna pregunta, me la puede transmitir a través del chat o me la puede plantear.
Now, Judy, in case you were on base and I just have no idea what base we were on, follow up your question. In case.
I'm not sure I know how to talk about what I'm trying to say. Well, I guess I am sure I don't know how to talk about what I'm trying to say. I guess I'm just, I mean, life in what appears is different for people or beings who have evolved further than I have, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to say in this essence.
Yeah, sure. The essence function expression has gotten you to think about other things.
Yes.
Yes,
that's it.
Yeah. So we won't talk about it here.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. It's gotten you to think about other things. It's just, a different vocabulary. I want to make sure my main point here, why I'm using this essence and function, is that it's clear to everyone. Is to say, don't look at these practices as if they are simply a means to get to a place, which is often how we tend to think about it. And there's a reason why it's like this, because that's such as examples of the teachings are a raft for you to cross the ocean to get to the other shore, and then once you're there, you don't need it, so there are reasons for that. But sometimes if we go too far in that direction, we then tend to think, that these are all instrumental. But it is not They're not instrumental. These disciplines that we are training in now, they are actually coming from the Buddha qualities.
And that's what we learned in Sobish.
Yes, yes, of course.
And all the other, all the other teachers.
Not Zobish, but Gongjik, you know.
But I mean, Gongchi, yeah, but in his book.
Yes, but only a handful of us in this room. So I'm then talks explicitly about that, you know. Yeah, basically that, you know, that so I elsewhere, those of you who have attended other things, I said, it's sort of like in the Soto Zen tradition, where they say, don't look at meditation as a means to get enlightened, but rather relate to meditation as the expression of enlightenment. Yes, so why do you meditate? You meditate because Buddhas meditate. Not you meditate because you will become a Buddha. So I'm within this context where 83, verse 83 and 84 might sometimes lead to people to think in terms of like, oh, all these things you do to get to the higher place. Once you are at the higher place, you know, the lower things don't matter so much. So it's within this context that I say, hold on, don't think like this. But think that the so-called lower, meaning these lower 5 paramitas, they are the expression of the 6 paramita. And so the more you're able to practice the 5 paramitas, the more you will realize the wisdom that we talk about in the 6 paramita. The more your realization of wisdom in the 6 paramita increase, the more careful and the more precise and the more exact your practice of the first 5 paramitas will be.
Entonces, bueno, seguían un poco como conversando acerca de la pregunta que tenía Judy y bueno, doctor Lili decía que en realidad la estaba llevando para un lado que no era como el sentido de lo que él quería transmitir, ¿ya? Entonces, él recalca que en realidad estas prácticas no las debemos ver como medios para llegar a un lugar. Existe una razón por la cual existen enseñanzas que se presentan de esta manera, como puentes o como caminos para llegar a alguna parte. Y nosotros tendemos a pensar que todas estas prácticas o estos métodos son instrumentales, pero no son instrumentos realmente. Estas disciplinas que nosotros entrenamos vienen de las cualidades del Buda. La tradición Soto Zen dice que la relación con la meditación es que esta es la expresión de la iluminación. Entonces uno, por ejemplo, medita porque Buda medita. Uno no medita para volverse Buda. En ese contexto, el verso 82 y 83 dicen que todo lo que hacemos para lograr, todo lo que hacemos, lo hacemos para llegar a un lugar más alto. Pero lo que él nos invita a hacer es que en realidad no pensarlo tan así, sino que más bien que estas paramitas que son, entre comillas, las más bajas, son en realidad la expresión de la sexta paramita, la expresión de la sabiduría. Entonces, de lo que más puedas practicar las 5 paramitas, más podrás lograr la sexta paramita de la sabiduría. Y de la misma manera, mientras más desarrolles la sexta paramita de la sabiduría, más profundo y más podrás lograr de las primeras 5.
Other questions?
Pregunta Dr. Lee, si hay más preguntas.
Dr. Lai.
Yes.
So yeah, I think I heard it somewhere, but it's like this, you know, if you do one paramita, that all the other 5 are actually in the background. Like it's
Yes.
just that one quality becomes overt and expressed. If you
Yes.
look at it carefully, then all the other 5 are in the background. Like even with giving, you need some level of wisdom for
Yes.
it to become paramita and not just dana, right?
Yes, of course.
That's what I've heard.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
You know, it may not be wisdom realizing emptiness, but you still need some level of wisdom, right?
Yes, of
That's
course.
what I heard.
Yes, of course. It's just that in Shantideva's presentation here, he doesn't explicitly say it, but it's all there, you know.
Entonces, Kong estaba comentando que también había escuchado
Go
que
ahead,
si uno
the
lograba una
translation
perfección,
of the
en
comment.
realidad significaba que también uno lograba las otras. Por ejemplo, si uno podía lograr la perfección de la generosidad, entonces también en eso había como de manera implícita sabiduría. Entonces, Dr. Lee dice sí, que en realidad efectivamente es así, pero en este caso Shantideva no lo dice explícitamente.
Yeah, there are certain Buddhist teachings and writings and that are, you know, geared in a very linear way. Yeah? But that linearity needs to also be understood in the broader context where it's in fact not that linear. On the other hand, there are also teachings that are very non-linear, but it's not, again, you know, to be read and understood without also seeing the more stages of progress. So these are 2 aspects that needs to be brought together at all times.
Entonces hay ciertas enseñanzas y escritos que van de manera muy lineal, pero estos también deben ser entendidos en el concepto como el que hemos visto hoy día, que también no existe una suerte de linealidad absoluta. Por otro lado, también hay enseñanzas que son por el contrario, en absoluto lineales, pero eso no quiere decir que nosotros debemos dejar de ver y entender los aspectos que son progresivos.
In the end, is the absolute and relative bodhicitta inseparable? The domain of absolute bodhicitta is non-linear. The domain of relative bodhicitta is linear. But so it's the linear and non-linear inseparable. Not one, just not 2.
Y al final existe el concepto de la bodhicitta relativa y la bodhicitta absoluta como inseparables. Y cuando nos referimos a la bodhicitta
See,
absoluta,
on this side of confusion, you
relativa
know,
y
when you
lineal,
say 1,
son
you're going to
inseparables.
park that 1 in either this side or that side. Then you fall into error.
Si caes entonces
So in the Buddhist tradition, it's often said not 2, non-dual. Non-dual doesn't mean 1. Be careful with that.
Claro, cuando se dice que cuando hablamos de que no sea dual, no quiere decir que sea uno de los dos. ¿Ya? Por eso no debemos caer en esto de que sea una o la otra. Que no sea dual no quiere decir que elegimos solamente uno.
On this side of confusion, you know, when we say 1, whether we know it or we don't know it, we'll either park that 1 in the extreme of the ultimate or in the extreme of the relative. But when we say not two, non-dual, then it will remind us there's the relative side, there's the ultimate side, and they are not two.
Entonces, también cuando hablamos de no dual, también nos recuerda que existe, ¿no es cierto?, el lado relativo y el lado absoluto, pero al mismo tiempo estos no son dos.
Elsewhere, I've said, like holding this feeling of tension, at least right now, between these two, relative and ultimate. This is a creative tension. It will help us actually realize it, how these are not two. We tend to have this tendency of wanting it to be settled. And one resolution. Either it's empty or it's not empty. Either exist or don't exist. So, here we have, neither existing nor non-existing.
Entonces tenemos que tener este sentimiento como de tensión entre lo que es relativo y lo que es absoluto. Y entender que no, cuando hablamos de dual no hablamos de dos. Nosotros tenemos esa tendencia a querer de que sea lo uno o lo otro, de que exista y que no exista, o que es vacío y no es vacío. Pero sin embargo lo que debemos tener en cuenta es que básicamente de que es que no existe y que tampoco.
So then this can be led, this can also be understood in the context of why Buddha's teachings is called the middle way. It's the middle way between essentialism or eternalism or nihilism.
Entonces, en ese sentido, también se puede entender el contexto de que por qué Buda habla del camino medio, porque está entre el medio, en el nihilismo y entre el eternalismo.
In this context of the two extremes, the middle way is the middle way that is free from the faults of these two extremes. The middle way is not take half of this and half of that and put it together and you got it right. No, it's to always be free from the faults of these two extremes, eternalism or essentialism and nihilism.
Entonces, en este contexto, lo de los dos extremos y el camino medio, debemos mantenernos fuera, ¿no es cierto?, de las fallas de estos dos extremos, del eternalismo y del nihilismo. Lo que no significa que es que yo considero la mitad de uno y la mitad del otro y ahí yo tengo el entendimiento correcto, sino que básicamente debemos estar libres de las fallas de estos dos extremos.
How do you do that? Now, Shantideva takes us back to how to do this. So now verse 85 to 90. He has such a way of taking you back to what Zen tradition calls, chopping wood and carrying water. Or we would call paying bills.
¿Cómo haces esto?
Don't get so carried away with nostalgia of carrying wood, chopping wood, carrying water, Basically, it's talking about you and me paying bills, so to say.
Entonces, ¿cómo haces esto? Ahora Shantideva nos lleva a cómo hacer esto en los versos 84 al 89 y nos lleva a lo que la tradición zen se entiende como cortar madera y llevar el agua. Pero realmente lo que se refiere con esto es como pagar las cuentas. No hay que dejarse llevar por este sentimiento como nostálgico, romántico de lo que significa llevar agua y cortar madera, sino que de lo que estamos hablando acá es como de pagar cuentas.
So let's read 85 to 90. Eat only what is needful. Share with those who have embraced the discipline. With those who are defenseless or have fallen into evil states, give everything except the 3 robes of religion. The body used to practice sacred teachings should not be harmed in meaningless pursuits. By acting thus, the wishes of all beings will swiftly and completely be attained. They should not give up their bodies whose compassionate thoughts are not yet pure, but let them be surrendered when, both now and in their future lives, great benefits is thereby gained. Do not teach the Dharma to the disrespectful, to those who, though not sick, wrap cloths around their heads, to those who carry weapons, staffs, or parasols, to those who are with covered heads. To those upon the lower paths, do not explain the vast and deep, nor tutor women unaccompanied by men, or every Dharma high or low, expound with equal reverence. Those suited to the teachings of great scope should not be introduced to lesser paths. The rules of conduct should not neglect nor lead astray with talk of sutras and
Vuelvo a
mantras.
repetir que yo estoy utilizando el texto que se compartió en el grupo, que es el Camino de la Vida del Bodhisattva, y que este verso tiene
Down to planet Earth. Essence, function, ultimate, relative, middle, eternalism, essentialism. Yeah. If all those kind of gets you excited or gives you a headache, doesn't matter. This is what matters. 85 to 90.
Dice, bueno, que si te da mucho dolor de cabeza, estas preguntas existenciales y el nihilismo y el eternalismo y todo eso. Entonces, y esto, lo que estamos leyendo desde el verso 84 al 89, esto es lo que importa.
Yes, so this is the part about benefiting others. The first step to benefiting others is to attract others to the Dharma. So this section is about more specifically. So there's a context. So Khenpo Kumbel very helpfully, it gives us the specific context of this set of prescriptions or proscriptions. Do this, but don't do this. Why? This is all geared towards how do we attract other beings to the Dharma?
Entonces está la parte principalmente sobre beneficiar a otros. La primera parte es cómo atraemos a otros al Dharma. La sección es más específicamente Khenpo Kumbel nos entrega el contexto específico de qué hacer y qué no hacer con el objetivo de atraer a otros seres al Dharma.
So 85, consume only what you need. So this is talking about, being frugal.
El verso 84 dice,
don't be wasteful.
Todo lo que necesitas. Sé frugal.
You do that so that you have the ability to share with others.
Tú haces eso en el contexto de desarrollar la habilidad para compartir con otros.
And who should we share our resources with? He identifies three in particular, three groups. Those who have embraced the discipline, meaning those who are on this path together. So we should share with them what we have. Those who are defenseless, that means those who are in need, we should share with them. And those who have fallen into evil states, we should also share with them. Here, there, is talking about especially those who are in the lower realms, hell realms, hungry ghost realm, animal realms. So even the lowest, we should, especially with the lowest, in terms of the depths of suffering that they are in, we should share with them.
Entonces aquí habla específicamente de con quién deberíamos compartir nuestros recursos, con aquellos que están en el camino, ¿ya? O sea, básicamente con aquellos que están en el Dharma, aquellos que no tienen, digamos, protección o están en necesidad, y que también con aquellos que han caído en estados diabólicos, deberíamos compartir con ellos. Aquí habla de aquellos que están en los reinos inferiores, incluso en los reinos más bajos. Con ellos deberíamos compartir.
Yeah, so those are the three groups, yeah, beings who are born in the lower realms, so in the context, giving to animals, then the one who are defenseless, they're talking about like humans who are in need, and then those others who are practicing the path. So these are the three. So he says, you give them everything. As much as you are capable of giving, you should give to them. And here he's talking, right? The original context of this teachings, Shantideva was talking to his fellow monks. And he says, give everything except for the robes that you're wearing. So he said, okay, not allowed to go naked. So that's what the meaning of three robes of religion is talking about.
Entonces dice que vuelve a aclarar un poco de estos tres grupos, por ejemplo, los reinos inferiores, también podemos hablar de los animales. Cuando habla de aquellos que están sin defensa, también habla de los humanos que están en necesidad. Y luego también aquellos que están practicando el camino. Tú dices, le das tanto como tú puedes, dar.
The three robes
en el contexto original de esta enseñanza se dice que te da todo excepto tus ropas porque no está permitido andar desnudo.
The lower robe, which is like the skirt, then the upper robe, and then the outer robe.
Claro.
The body.
Aquí dice, excepto por los tres hábitos.
So now,
habla de los tres
we need to
hábitos, habla del que
have
está abajo,
a new
el que está
relationship
arriba y el
with
que va
this
encima.
body, which he reminds us, it is the vehicle, it is the means for us to practice the teachings. So with regards to this body, it says, you should not harm it with meaningless pursuits.
Y también debemos cuidar el cuerpo, porque es el vehículo para practicar las enseñanzas. En relación al cuerpo, entonces no deberíamos dañarlo con cosas que sean insignificantes.
Overeating is a form of meaningless pursuits, okay?
Comer mucho es una forma, por ejemplo, de dañar el cuerpo con cosas sin importancia.
extreme sports is a form of meaningless pursuits, okay?
También deportes extremos es una forma de...
From the perspective of Bodhisattva training.
Sin importancia, en el contexto del entrenamiento del Bodhisattva.
Staying up, binging on, all episodes of Breaking Bad, over 5 days, or whatever, series that you are chasing on Netflix. That's meaningless pursuits that will harm the body.
Mantenerse despierto viendo todos los episodios de Breaking Bad en 5 días, o cualquier serie, dice Netflix también, son cosas que dañan, que son medios insignificantes que dañan el cuerpo.
So it says, so take good care, of this body, of this life. And in this way, the wishes of beings can swiftly be attained, which is ultimately what all beings wish for, is freedom from suffering and achieving happiness.
Entonces cuida este cuerpo, esta vida, ¿no es cierto? Y si cuidas este cuerpo, todos los deseos de los seres pueden ser logrados.
So now you can skillfully care for your body, for your life, with this objective of using this body, this life, to achieve true benefit.
Se cuidas tu cuerpo y tu vida con este objetivo de usarlo para lograr el verdadero beneficio.
So 87 is where Shantideva says, yes, we have many examples of the bodhisattvas giving up their lives, giving up their bodies out of true and overwhelming compassion for others. But then he says in 87, however, you should not be reckless about that.
Entonces el verso 86 dice, Shantideva dice, sí, tenemos muchos ejemplos de bodhisattvas que entregaron su cuerpo por la verdadera compasión de otros, pero tú no deberías ser tan acelerado, ¿no es cierto?, en eso, digamos.
Because our confusion, our afflictive emotions, can be very sneaky. It can disguise itself as, an act of compassion when it is an act of ego. So if you give up your life due to stupid ego, but then you think, oh, this is being compassionate, then, great mistake. But if you really, like you surrender this life, this body, completely due to bodhicitta, then great benefit for sure.
Entonces, dice que igual la compasión activa es un poco, hay que tener cuidado, dice, porque si tú das tu vida realmente por algo que finalmente termina siendo como el estúpido ego y estás pensando que estás haciéndolo por compasión, esto es un error. Si realmente se entrega su cuerpo y vida por la bodhicitta, entonces gran beneficio.
So 88, it says, do not teach the Dharma to the disrespectful. Then the next 3 lines are examples of what's considered disrespectful in Shantideva's context. So for us, that's not necessarily literally what we should be on the lookout for. But the main point is don't teach the Dharma to those who are disrespectful. Now, this point about not teaching the Dharma to the disrespectful, first thing to be said is be careful that you don't do that thinking, I need to be respected. No, this is not talking about that. This is saying you only teach the Dharma when the conditions are right.
Entonces, en el verso 86 dice que no se enseña el Dharma a los irrespetuosos. Las otras tres líneas es lo que él se considera irrespetuoso, pero para nosotros probablemente literalmente no es lo que nosotros deberíamos ver en esta era, digamos. El punto principal ya es que debemos cuidarnos, ¿no es cierto? Y no debes en esto entenderlo pensando en que cuando habla de respeto es por respeto a ti. Solamente dice que tú solo enseñas el Dharma cuando las condiciones son las correctas.
So the examples he gave are those who do not seek red cloths around their heads, those who carry weapons, staffs, meaning like a staff is like a wooden weapon as well, or parasols, like fancy umbrellas, or to those who are with covered heads. So here he's basically saying, if people, the main point here is if people are not interested in the Dharma, don't start teaching them the Dharma. It's not useful.
Entonces acá el verso 87 dice, no enseñes el Dharma vasto y profundo a los irrespetuosos, a las personas sanas que llevan una tela alrededor de su cabeza, a los que portan paraguas, varas o armas, o a aquellos con la cabeza cubierta. Aquí lo que está diciendo básicamente es que si la gente no está interesada en el Dharma, entonces no les enseñes el Dharma, no es útil.
Now, of course, you have stories, for example, I think in the life of Milarepa, while he's wandering in the caves, in the mountains, some hunters come by, and then he taught them. Then you say, hey, Milarepa, you're not listening to Shantideva, they're carrying weapons. Why did you teach them? So here is a good example of it's not that it's prohibited here, it's allowed there. Not that superficial, but rather Milarepa is observing the spirit of what is being said here. But in that case, Milarepa could see that time is ripe, that hunter, his mind is ripe, is ready. So he, Milarepa, through Milarepa's power. So also what Shantideva is saying, this advice is for generally those of us who don't have the power to perceive beyond the surface level. Then, for people who have no interest in the Dharma, who come to the situation with a lot of pride, or with intention to harm, or with disinterest, don't push the Dharma on them. This is not the right time, because it will backfire on you. Don't do that.
Entonces hay, por ejemplo, historias como en la vida de Milarepa, cuando él estaba vagando en las cuevas y llegan unos cazadores y él les da enseñanza. Entonces uno podría decir, oye, pero Milarepa no le está haciendo caso a las enseñanzas de Shantideva, que dice claramente que no debe enseñarle a personas con armas. Pero la verdad es que Milarepa lo hace observando el espíritu de lo que dice aquí, porque realmente Milarepa pudo ver que la mente de ese cazador estaba lista y a través de su poder él podía verlo. Shantideva generalmente da estas reglas para aquellos que no puedan percibir más allá del nivel superficial. Entonces, aquellos que llegan a la situación con orgullo o desinterés, ¿no es cierto? Tú no presionas el Dharma para que ellos lo escuchen, porque lo que va a suceder es que te va a llegar el tiro de vuelta.
'89, to those upon the lower paths do not explain the vast and deep. The vast and deep, more specifically, is talking about teachings on emptiness. Who are those on the lower paths? Those on the lower paths are meaning those with lower maturity, capacity. So in other words, don't teach someone this so-called profound teachings of emptiness if you don't know, or especially if you know, like this will just lead them to nihilism. Because when the teachings of emptiness are not properly taught, when the recipient is not ready to hear it, it will translate into the ideas like, oh, from the ultimate perspective, nothing matters. From the ultimate perspective, or even from the ultimate perspective, everything is perfect. And that is the vast and profound. But so often those types of teachings, are kind of like turned into bumper stickers. And say, oh, therefore no problem. Oh, my afflictive emotions, yeah, no problem, it's all perfect. Yes, from the ultimate perspective, yes, but meanwhile, day in and day out, you're suffering. So does it matter or not matter? That you are under the power of afflictive emotions. It matters because right now, you're miserable. Don't go tell that person, oh, it doesn't matter. This is the perfection of imperfection. Just, it's fine. No, you cannot say things like this. Again, we don't need to be dogmatic about this. We don't need to be fundamentalist about this. What Shantideva is saying, don't, try to impress people with these high teachings, especially when they cannot digest this.
Entonces, en el verso 88, cuando hablamos del Dharma vasto y profundo, realmente se está refiriendo a las enseñanzas de la vacuidad, ¿no? Y que no deben enseñarse a personas que tienen menor madurez o capacidad. ¿Por qué? Porque si tú haces esto, lo vas a llevar al nihilismo. Cuando el recipiente no está listo para oírlo, se traduce en que finalmente las personas terminan creyendo que desde la perspectiva última nada importa, ¿no es cierto? Porque es vasto y profundo. Pero finalmente estas enseñanzas así se transforman en un problema. Porque mis emociones aflictivas no importan, porque al final todo es perfecto. Pero en realidad sí importan porque estás en sufrimiento y estás bajo el poder de las emociones aflictivas. ¿Ya? Importa porque ahora es miserable. Entonces, no le digas a la gente que no importa, que la perfección de la imperfección. No puedes decir cosas así. Tampoco necesitamos ser dogmáticos y fundamentalistas sobre esto. Lo que Shantideva dice acá es que no intentes impresionar a la gente con estas altas enseñanzas, sobre todo cuando estas personas no la pueden.
Nor tutor women unaccompanied by men. Okay, see? Buddhism has words that can be easily read and lead to conclusions as crazy as, say, maybe we judge other religions, say, oh, they believe this, things like that. We certainly have words that can also lead to situations that we think, oh, Buddha says, women should always be accompanied by men. They should not go outside if they're not accompanied by men. They should not drive. You can become a crazy Buddhist too, if you read statements like this and you interpret it in those ways. So my point is, don't look at other religions and say, oh, you look at it's a problem of interpretation. So here the interpretation is, it's not that women is the problem. Shantideva is talking to a bunch of guys, monks. And he say, hey, you guys, okay, don't go tutor women, which of course objects of your desire. In other words, don't use the Dharma as an excuse, or not even use excuse, that presumes like you are planning, oh, I'm going to go do something wrong with them. But rather be careful, don't just because you say, oh, because I want to share the Dharma, and then you expose yourself to failings that might come. So again, this is this context, right? This particular section is about how to attract others to Dharma. Yes, you do many things. You have to be creative, but always be careful. Don't destroy yourself. Then nobody can be helped. So this is good advice for a lot of Dharma teachers, these days especially. Many Dharma teachers start with the good intention, oh, I want to help others. But then they put themselves into these situations where pretty soon everyone is harmed. So this is this line, nor to the women unaccompanied by men, nor to the men unaccompanied by women. In the end, it's not about accompanied or not accompanied. It's talking about don't, in your excitement of saying, oh, I want to share the Dharma with everyone, and then walk down, feeding your afflictive emotions and causing harm to self and other. Be careful.
Okay, entonces acá también el verso indica no enseñar a una mujer que esté en ausencia de hombres. Entonces tenemos palabras aquí que nos llevan a, quizás pudiéramos nosotros interpretar que las mujeres siempre tienen que estar acompañadas con un hombre que no deberían conducir. Y que te puedes volver un budista loco si interpretas las palabras de esa manera literalmente. Acá la interpretación no es que la mujer es el problema. Acá de partida debemos entender que Shantideva está hablando un montón de monjes, ¿ya? Por lo tanto, no uses el Dharma como excusa, dices, debes ser cuidadoso porque te expones a ti mismo a fallas que podrían ser finalmente causa de emociones aflictivas, como es, por ejemplo, que la mujer, porque la mujer finalmente es un objeto de deseo para los hombres. Entonces, debes ser creativo, pero debes ser cuidadoso porque puedes terminar destruyéndote. Este es el buen consejo, este es el consejo para las enseñanzas. Muchas enseñanzas comienzan con una buena intención, pero se ponen en situaciones finalmente donde todos terminan sufriendo, terminan dañados. Entonces, cuando habla de que no enseñes a hombres acompañados con mujeres, no tiene realmente que ver con el tema de la compañía, de que esté o no con una mujer, sino que tiene que ver con la idea de no enseñar en circunstancias donde termine finalmente dañado por las emociones aflictivas, en este caso el deseo, por el de la mujer.
Yeah, again, these rules, Shantideva, he's talking to his fellow monks. And the Buddha is very clear about don't scandalize people. So he prohibited his monks from accepting invitation to be privately tutoring this person or that person. He's like, no, you don't do that.
Entonces, nuevamente, estas reglas habla a los monjes, ¿ya? Y les dice que no deben escandalizar a la gente y prohíbe a los monjes de aceptar invitaciones, de estar, por ejemplo, privadamente enseñando a una u otro tipo de persona.
There was an old monk in Malaysia where I grew up. He this is like 20 plus years ago. He says, old monk, he was like, these days, he was like, doesn't matter man or women. He says, even men, he says to his monks, he says, you should not privately tutor them.
Conocí a un monje cerca de 20 años atrás en Malasia, que decía que en estos días realmente no importa si se trata de un hombre o una mujer. Incluso a los hombres no deberías estar enseñándoles en forma de privada.
The gist here is, even as you're trying to attract others to the Dharma, don't do it in ways that will endanger yourself and others.
Entonces, el fondo de esto es que si tú atraes a otros al Dharma, no lo hagas de una manera en que te puedas dañar a ti mismo y a otros.
Especially as I see, especially like in the West, when people come to you for Dharma, often, not always, but often, they are in an emotionally very fragile situation. So that is part of that interdependence there. Then the teacher, and often also in some ways, some of the teachers are also in a situation where they're so isolated and emotionally kind of needy, especially if they are from taken out of their cultural context in Nepal or Tibet or India or wherever and plopped in the middle of America or somewhere like that, in the middle of United States, So they are emotionally plucked out of their support, where they have lived all their lives, with their Dharma brothers, right? So we're not even talking about like sexual things. But then you have like these two things coming together, and it's so easy from there, that interdependence, that problems would arise. So this is good advice, like, so it's, in other words, in other contexts, you can just think of it, outside the context of spiritual Buddhist instruction, even like in the therapist, right? It's saying, right? Another way of summarizing this section is professionalism, professional integrity. Guard that.
Especialmente dice, como sucede en Occidente, mucha gente llega al Dharma a menudo en condiciones emocionales bastante frágiles. Así esto también es parte de la interdependencia, y también encontramos a maestros que con frecuencia también están en una situación frágil emocional porque han sido aislados de sus necesidades emocionales, especialmente aquellos que han sido sacados de su contexto cultural, por ejemplo, Nepal, India, y los ponen en el medio de Estados Unidos, y también están emocionalmente desconectados de su soporte. Entonces, no estamos hablando solamente del aspecto sexual, sino que lo que vemos es que cuando estas dos variables se juntan, es tan fácil que surjan problemas. Desde esta mirada, es muy buen consejo lo que da Shantideva acá. Fuera incluso del contexto budista, incluso en el ambiente, en el aspecto terapéutico, por ejemplo, también se requiere integridad profesional, velar por eso.
Yeah, so even in the secular context, in those situations where people are fragile emotionally, already we also have these things to protect. Therapists and patients should not get involved emotionally, physically. And then in the, like, for example, addiction recovery groups. One of the big no-nos is not forget about even patients and therapists. Fellow members of a therapy group should not get involved because these are emotionally fragile areas, and it's so easy for problems to arise, for advantage to be taken. So this is just the gist of what is being said here in our modern context. Right? It's basically this, you know.
Entonces, incluso en el contexto secular, donde las personas están en estados frágiles emocionalmente, como por ejemplo pacientes y terapeutas, no deberían relacionarse, o personas que se encuentran recuperándose de estados adictivos, en grupos de adictos, por ejemplo, no pueden relacionarse tampoco, porque son áreas emocionales frágiles, y es muy fácil que surjan los problemas en nuestro contexto moderno también.
And every Dharma, high or low, expound with equal reverence. So the immediate reference here is to the individual liberation scope of practicing and the universal scope of benefiting all beings. Shantideva here reminds us, just because we are bodhisattvas, as in we've taken the bodhisattva vow, we've taken the vow to benefit beings, we should not look at the individual liberation teachings and practices and consider them lesser. Equal reverence. So all 84,000 dharmas are equally dharmas for liberation. We should not say, oh, this is more profound, this is less profound, this is more important, this is less important. Approach all of them as the single path to awakening.
Entonces, no expongas el recipiente del Dharma vasto o un Dharma inferior. Básicamente habla del Dharma, los Dharmas superiores e inferiores, dice el aspecto universal, dice el beneficio de todos los seres. Dice, no solamente porque tengamos el voto de los bodhisattvas, no deberíamos ver las enseñanzas y considerarlas inferiores. Todos los 84.000 enseñanzas son igualmente dharmas para la liberación. Y verlos como más o menos profundos no es lo correcto. Todos son parte de un único camino para el despertar.
Yeah, with this kind of mindset, whether it's individual liberation practices or practices and teachings of the great scope of benefiting beings, with equal reverence and appreciation towards them, then he says, those who are suited for the great scope teachings, in other words, the benefiting of all beings, then it would not be appropriate that they are discouraged from that and say, oh, no, you should only think about yourself. Yeah? Which is sort of like what the individual liberation vows are saying. So here, Shantideva also says, first you cultivate a clear understanding. All the teachings of the Buddha are profound. But within that context, if you know this person has the ability to generate the greater motivation, don't keep them with that limited motivation. You should also inspire them to move in the direction of the greater motivation.
Entonces presta igual respeto al Dharma inferior como al superior. Aquí habla de este tipo de pensamiento, refiriéndose que hay prácticas individuales, ¿no es cierto? Y hay prácticas que son como más amplias en términos del beneficio a los demás. Entonces, y son todas igualmente beneficiosas y todas deben apreciarse de la misma forma, pero luego dice, aquellos que están preparados para las grandes enseñanzas, luego no es apropiado, ¿no es cierto?, que estos individuos, ¿no es cierto?, sean como alejados de estas prácticas. Acá Shantideva dice primero que debemos generar el entendimiento de que todas las enseñanzas
Then the final two
válidas,
lines of this
y
section,
luego
the rules of
mover
conduct you
aquellos
should
que
not
tienen más
neglect.
capacidad en la dirección de las grandes enseñanzas, la
And
gran,
how
la
do
gran
you
motivación.
neglect? It's through, talk of sutras and mantras. In other words, what Shantideva is saying here, sutras and mantras here is just the example he gives here. Another way to translate is sort of like with scriptures and spells. Or another way to translate this is, don't get carried away by your theories and your magic. Pay attention to your conduct. All this big talk about philosophy, all this big talk about mysterious things. Sutra, scriptures means like, philosophy, logic. Sometimes we are so clever, that we destroy ourselves. Or sometimes, we are so mystical, so mysterious. We love all this mystical stuff. We love all this magical stuff, which is the mantra part. And we forget the rules of conduct that the Buddha gave. The rules of conduct that the Buddha gave is based on the principle of not harming ourselves, not harming others. Not conducting ourselves in such a way that not only protects us, but also prevents others from being harmed directly or indirectly. That is the gist of what we have to pay attention to.
Entonces, dice, dejando el camino de la vida del Bodhisattva, no debe atraérseles con sutras y mantras. Acá, básicamente lo que quiere decir con sutras y mantras es que no te debes dejar llevar por las teorías y por la magia, sino que debes poner atención en la conducta. Todo esto sobre la filosofía, la lógica. A veces somos tan inteligentes que nos destruimos. Somos tan místicos y misteriosos, llamamos todo lo que tiene que ver con lo mágico y lo místico, por ejemplo, con la mística de los mantras. Y olvidamos las reglas de conducta que el Buda dio. Y estas están basadas en el principio de no dañarnos a nosotros y no dañar a otros, de no conducirnos de esa manera. ¿Ya? Solamente también para prevenirnos, ¿no es cierto?, de no dañarnos a nosotros y de no dañar al resto de manera directa o indirecta. Es a eso a lo que nosotros debemos prestar atención.
Yeah, so remember again, this specific place we are in this text, Khenpo Kumbel identifies as this discipline of benefiting others. So you might say, well, I don't see a lot of benefiting others here, explicitly addressed. It's almost like he's saying, of course you should benefit others. You already know how to benefit others, but here I'm going to tell you, when you are thinking of benefiting others, don't let these things slip. Just like in the discipline of cultivating virtue, first he talks about giving up attachment to the body. So likewise here, if you want to benefit others, first you need to guard your own well-being and conduct. And these days, like you hear, a lot of like scandals, spiritual teachers, Buddhists or non-Buddhists, yes, of course, some, you can also say, but also they also brought a lot of good. But if you bring a lot of good and at the same time you're causing a lot of harm, then what exactly is going on? It might seem really great. Oh, but your impact was so great. But also Shantideva says, exactly, you are a bodhisattva. You need to understand that your impact now is no longer just your own business. So especially given that, you need to be very careful. And all of this advice is under the chapter on vigilant introspection. which is really about discipline, conduct, paramita. Yeah, so don't forget, right? The circles of context. Always have a kind of a bigger view of where we are in this text, and then we can appreciate the particular words better.
Entonces quisiera recordar nuevamente que este es el lugar específico en el que estamos en el texto, que en Pocumpe lo identifica como en aquel que se trata de los beneficios de beneficiar a otros, ¿ya? Pero acá dice que cuando piensas en beneficiar a otros, no debes dejar que se escapen cosas. Dice, si quieres beneficiar a otros, debes cuidar tu propio bienestar y tu propia conducta. Por ejemplo, actualmente hay muchos escándalos de maestros budistas y no budistas que no han tenido una buena conducta. Y uno puede pensar que bueno, pero que al final igual le hicieron mucho beneficio. Sí, pero también le hicieron mucho daño. Entonces, ¿qué está pasando con todo esto? Y esto es lo que exactamente Shantideva indica que debes entender. Es que ya cuando tomas los votos del Bodhisattva, no es todo solamente respecto a ti, ¿no? Sino que tiene un impacto. Entonces, debes tener siempre todo bajo una introspección vigilante, que es una de las paramitas, ¿no es cierto?, de la conducta ética. Nunca debemos olvidar en el contexto que siempre hay una visión más amplia de dónde estamos en el texto para que podamos apreciar de mejor manera las palabras.
So 85 to 90 is about things that you would do, that you might do in the context of bringing people to Dharma, things that you could do and get in trouble due to your own afflictive emotions, your motivation being impure. This is this section. The next section, he's going to talk about things that you do, even if your motivation is not negative, even if your klesha is not at play, there are still things that you might do that will cause others to run away from the Dharma. Watch out for that. That's going to be the next section, which we will continue next Tuesday. This Saturday, we don't have class because I'm leading an online retreat with the Tibet House in Guatemala.
Entonces, de 84 al verso 89, se trata básicamente de las cosas que haces y de las cosas que no haces en términos de atraer a la gente al Dharma. Y las cosas que podrías hacer y te podrían causar problemas debido a que tus motivaciones no son puras. La siguiente sección habla también de las cosas que haces, incluso si tus motivaciones no son negativas, podrías de todas maneras alejar al Dharma, alejar a las personas del Dharma. Entonces esto vamos a continuar el próximo martes, porque este sábado no va a haber clases debido a que el Dr. Lee va a estar dirigiendo un retiro en Guatemala.
Either Omar, Javier, or somebody, if you can put on the chat screen the link to the recordings for this class, for people who want to go review, people want to watch earlier ones if you missed them. It's nicely in the Drikung Dhammakirti YouTube channel in the 3 languages. So it's all nicely put there by Omar, organized into playlists. So if Omar or whoever who knows that link can share them in chat, that would be most wonderful. And then those of you who need that link, you need to copy that link from chat before we end this class. Otherwise, poof, it will dissolve.
y dice que si lo necesitan, que lo pueden copiar antes de que se acabe la clase, porque si no, después se disuelve.
Chanju Sem Chorim Poche Magye Banam Ge Gyurche Ge Banyam Pa Me Payam Mone Gong Du Bewan Sho. Okay, tata everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. Thank you to Claudia. Thank you to Wu Ting. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Urban Dharma for paying for this Zoom.
Thank you.
Costs $200 a month to have this Zoom level that we have. So Urban Dharma is paying for this bill. So we thank Urban Dharma as well. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias a todos.
Thank you to everyone.
Gracias.